Welcome to Living Ardently. I'm your host, Adrian Giraldi, and today's guest is super great. I actually went to school with her at some point, so I'm really excited to have her on. And let's get into introducing her. So, like I said, today's guest is a fellow Ave Maria graduate like myself. She's a mental health advocate. She's currently, she just got accepted to study her master's in marriage and family counseling, so that's exciting. Please pray for that. She's also a multi-platinum selling artist. Follow her at Chenele K. Please welcome my guest, Chenele Shaw. Are you okay with me using your last name?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Okay, cool. Chenele Shaw, y'all. Welcome. How you doing?
Oh, so good. It's the end of the day, but it's that wonderful time of the year when it's still daytime at like 8 p.m. So,
that's the greatest.
So it's great. I think after this, I'm just going to close these blinds and just call it. I might just go to sleep. I'm so old now. I think this is it. So, but I'm doing great. Yes.
Yeah, that's great. We went to, you graduated when, 2016? Is it?
2015.
Oh, 2015. Okay. Mm-hmm. I graduated in 2017 from Ave, and I studied theology. You studied
theology. Twins.
Hey, that's what's up.
Best
and,
one.
I think it was one of the last times. You're originally from, is it from Florida or Louisiana?
From Florida. So I'm originally from
okay.
Central Florida, so like 40 minutes above Disney World.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So I guess I was, because I know you were close friends with Tyler, Neal, and them, and I know they were from the Louisiana area.
Crew.
Mm-hmm. The Louisiana crew. Love them. Mm-hmm. So before we get into it, why don't we play some rapid fire questions and get to know you a little bit for those who don't know you. All right, so I'm gonna spit these rapid fire questions, and I'm gonna see if I can make you stutter at some point.
Okay. Probably won't be hard. Okay.
Ariel or Jasmine?
Ooh, Jasmine.
First celebrity crush?
Usher.
Favorite junk food?
Cookies.
Favorite TV show? Childhood TV show?
Ooh, childhood TV show. Oh, I'm going way back. First thing popping in my mind was Little Bear.
Ooh. Favorite TV show currently?
Oh, How I Met Your Mother.
Favorite movie?
Whale Rider.
Favorite Disney Pixar film?
Oh, Disney Pixar. Monsters Inc. Is that Disney Pixar?
Yeah, that's Disney Pixar.
Okay, Monsters Inc. Mm-hmm.
Is double dipping ever okay in parties?
No. In parties? What are we, savages? Oh, no. That's disgusting.
What does one person need to be happy?
Ooh, love. Corny.
Is there something, is there such thing as objective beauty?
Yes.
Sourdough or wheat?
Sourdough.
Are lifeguards attractive?
Oh, yeah. What? Yes.
Say something in an Asian language.
In an Asian language?
Can be anything. Chinese, Japanese, Filipino.
Hey, wait. Ni hao. Wait, yeah, okay. Okay, all right.
She popped it off.
Okay. I was like, what?
Cake or pie?
Cake.
How healthy is it to cry?
Oh, very.
No, how often is healthy?
Oh, how healthy?
How often is healthy to cry?
Oh, you know what? Honestly, however often you feel like it's necessary for you to express that sad feeling, to get that out.
That's a great answer. What's your favorite carb? Bread, pasta, rice, or potatoes?
Bread.
If you could ask God one question, what would it be?
Oh my gosh. What's the meaning to life, right?
Do you know how to salsa dance?
Oh my gosh. I know how to do the cha-cha real smooth from the... from whatever song that is, which is not, that...
Cha-cha slide, is it?
Yeah, the cha-cha slide. I know how to cha-cha slide, but that's not real, so only that, yes.
Giving presents or getting presents?
Oh, giving presents.
from a scale of 1 to 10, how hot do you like your shower?
Probably an 8.
Do you like the smell of gasoline?
Yes, that's such a good question. You know, diesel gas, for some reason, it always makes me think of the airport, and then it makes me want to, like, go somewhere. I, like, love it. I don't know why.
Wow, there's so many. I'm learning this about so many people.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I didn't know that this was such a thing.
I love it.
Like, I would never think twice. Like, I would never want to be near a gasoline station if I didn't have to.
I love it.
Part of the reason why I want a Tesla so bad, just so I don't have to use gas.
My gosh, wow. You would have made it if you have a Tesla. Oh my
right?
gosh.
Exactly. Polka dots or stripes?
Okay, polka dots.
Dark or milk? Chocolate?
Dark.
Do you have any friends taller than 6'4"?
Yes. Yes, I do.
Would you rather lose all your hair or gain 50% more hair?
Oh, 50% more hair. What? That would be awesome.
Yeah, right? What is the most numbers of hours you watch TV in a single day?
I'm being exposed. Probably, oh gosh. How long are the episodes of How I Met Your Mother? 5? People are going to be like, that's horrific. 5.
5. That's a whole day.
Yeah.
Would you eat a day-old taquito from 7-Eleven?
Whoa, absolutely not. Maybe young Chenele, but not old Chenele.
If you had a child, would you want them to be the most popular person in their high school?
No. No, because I don't know. I feel like popularity is gained in super strange ways now. I would almost feel all right if my kid was obscure with like 3 good friends.
Yeah. It's like Lizzie McGuire, you know, like they have.
Yeah, it's kind of like I just want my kid to exist and like be good and virtuous, but I don't care if they're popular. Right. Yeah.
Can you touch your toes without bending your knees?
Yes.
If everyone in the world had to get married when they reach a certain age, what age would it be?
30?
I think that's a good number.
I think that's fair. Yeah.
I think that's a fair number.
You're through your 20s.
Yeah. How many times did you sneeze in the last 7 days?
Oh, twice. I actually thought about that this morning. So. Twice. It's super random, so yeah.
Explanation why?
I know.
Do you own a bicycle?
No.
What is wind?
Forceful air? That one really got me. I'm like, what?
But it's like, so true.
I'm like, angry air? I don't know.
Angry air. Oh, man. Whew. What is the hair? If there's a hair in your soup at a restaurant, would you return it?
Soup. Nah, I'd eat it.
Who inspires you?
Oh gosh. Right now, probably my mom.
And last question. If you could push a button and make everyone in the world 7% happier, but it would also place the world in a worldwide ban on hairstyling products, would you push it?
What? If everyone's happier, but I can't do my hair, well, I would choose
everybody.
I would choose everyone's happiness. Ugh, that's a Christian answer, but
push. Push, but hesitantly.
I would hesitate. Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So if you guys are not watching, I know I keep on saying this. If you're not watching on YouTube, go check this out on YouTube because Chenele's facial reaction to some of these questions were priceless. Priceless.
You got me on a few of them.
Yeah, you're like.
Yeah, I'm like I had no idea.
The what is it? The TV hours. How many?
Oh
hours
yeah, I definitely felt exposed. Yes.
Mm-hmm. So, for those, so that's rapid fire questions. We like to do that with our guests and stuff like that to kind of get to know them a little bit. But we really want to get to know you a bit more. So give us a little bit about your background, of your faith background.
Sure.
Catholic all your life, or
Gotcha. Okay, so I. Both of my parents are Catholic, baptized Catholic. My my mom and dad sent my little sister and I to private Catholic school from preschool to 8th grade. So we can be good kids, have manners, etc. But we were seasonal Catholics, so we really only went to mass on Christmas and Easter, and then on the days obligated that I had to for school. So so raised Catholic my whole life, but not in a way that I was devoutly practicing. When I was in 8th grade, my parents got a divorce, and so with that came me on my way to high school, and them just kind of being like, all right, well, we don't go to mass. We're not going to do the mass thing together anymore. And my parents would come with me separately if I wanted to go on Sundays. But I just kind of dropped my faith as well, because it just wasn't something that was important to me because I was out of school. I went to a public school, public high school, and I was kicked out of high school in my sophomore year. And the only thing I was allowed to go to was youth group, because my mom was like, well, the kids in youth group probably do their homework. So I was allowed to go to youth group. So I went to youth group just to get out of the house and get out of my perpetual grounding. And I decided that the kids at youth group seemed like they were having a really good time. They were having fun, and they seemed like their parents trusted them. So I thought a better community than the kids that I was already friends with. So I committed to the whole youth group thing, and then from there I just really committed to that community and went to a Catholic college, became a youth minister, a teacher, and and
if you are ever unformed,
Chenele
has a video up there on Formed. It's really
I am
great.
a celebrity, so I am on Formed. I'm sponsored by Hostess Cupcakes. No, just kidding. I wish. So Catholic my whole life, but not really practicing until my reversion when I was in high school.
Right. Yeah. It's just a thing. I feel like for most of us who were raised Catholic, but there's only so many of us that were super Catholic from birth to now.
Yeah, exactly.
There's always some sort of interruption, whether they were super on fire when they're young, and then there was an interruption, then they came back, or
Agreed.
Because I feel as we're young people, we always are often just easily tempted and fall into that. And as a youth minister, and myself as one right currently. We see that in our teens, even our well-intended ones. It happens.
Oh my gosh.
And that's what we're there for, is to be able to help them, pull them out and show them that there's a better side of these things. And so now you're going into studying marriage and family counseling. What called you to do that?
So I used to live in Denver for 3 years,
Cool.
and I was a youth director there. So,
nice.
Youth ministry, for anyone that knows, and that vibration, it is something. So it is awesome, and I loved, and I still love my kids. They are the best. Yeah. And you go through your hills and valleys and being a youth minister. Sometimes you have one kid come to youth group. Sometimes you have 25. And so I really enjoyed it, my time there. But then after 3 years, just really felt like I wasn't feeling it anymore. And God was calling me in a different direction. So I moved to Philadelphia to be near my family and to live with some friends, because I lived by myself after college for 4 years. Yeah, and so now I live with some friends from college, and when I was here, I worked with the elderly and elderly home care at a Catholic home care agency, which was so interesting. Wow. And so while I was working, I thought to myself, what are some things that, because I didn't want to be a youth minister again, but I thought, what are things that I enjoyed from youth ministry and what are things that just pique my interest currently. And I thought mental health is something that I've been really invested in these past 6 years of my life. Since I started seeing a therapist when I moved to Denver. I feel like it's been really formative for me to be able to learn more about myself, healthy coping mechanisms, better communication, that sort of thing. And it's been really transformative for me as well to be able to communicate with my family better, and to be able to offer more of myself as a daughter and a sister and a friend, because I just became more self-aware. So I figured it would be really dope to be able to actually learn things in a concrete environment, and then be able to, to redistribute that knowledge. So after a couple months of working with the home care agency, I was like, you know what? And with coronavirus gave me weeks and weeks to think about what I wanted to, right? I decided to start applying for schools, and here we are. So
that's awesome.
A long road later.
That's so cool, because when we're as youth ministers, sometimes you're seen as somebody who needs to be aware of mental health, right? And because our teens, they're working through it too, some of them have parents that don't know that their kids are working through it, and sometimes they will spill out their guts to you, and what do I do with this information, and it's tough. I mean, obviously then you're not a counselor, you're not a somebody can help them professionally, but you all you can really do is listen. So it's really cool if when people, I know some youth ministers, my friends of mine who went back to school to study psychology so they can come back and do ministry better.
Oh, that's dope, because youth ministry and any kind of ministry, right? Relational. Yeah. But youth ministry for sure is one of those things where you start becoming a youth minister. I'm sure you've had that same experience, and you start and you don't really realize how intense. When they say relational, it really is a lot of listening and receiving children, right? Children, but you're also receiving parents, and you're receiving vulnerability, and how nervous they are because they might not know something about the faith, and they feel uncomfortable transmitting that knowledge, and then you have to kind of navigate how to communicate with them as an adult, but then also how to support their child without, it's such an interesting thing that happens when you have to work with both the parents and the child. Right.
And then, it's a delicate balance. It's also just it builds it teaches you to have to be okay with uncomfortable, being uncomfortable. Because talking to somebody's parents about their kid, talking to somebody about their kid who's struggling with something they have no idea about, and having to kind of tell them, because if it's something huge, especially if it's something that if a teen suddenly says that they've been abused or anything like that, you have to get legal. It needs to be legal. You're obligated by your job to report that, right? And so it's hard. And knowing people who have done that, went away from ministry because they felt I'm not equipped yet. Yes, I have my theology degree, but I don't know how to handle this yet.
Yeah,
so
and that's
they left
huge.
And came back, huge. What was some challenging parts when working through your own mental health? If you don't mind getting a little vulnerable there.
Oh no, of course not. So I think for me specifically, there's a huge stigma in Black and brown communities against mental health and mental wellness, right? And so growing up, things that happen in your family stay in your family. You don't share things that happen because it's between the family members. And when you do share something, it's kind of seen as a betrayal, because it's private, especially if you're talking about a therapist, the kind of running the running idea is that you're paying somebody to listen to you, right? You're paying somebody to listen to you, the family drama, which should be private in the first place. So there's huge stigmas. And so going to therapy first was already one of those things where I went for 2 years and I didn't tell anybody. I only told like a couple of my friends. But I didn't tell my mom or my dad because I had to go for 2 years just to feel like I wasn't like betraying my family by bringing them up in my sessions. And so I think that was one of the hardest things to work through, was feeling like it was okay that I went, and that growing up with there being such a stigma around taking care of my mental health, because we live in like a grind culture, right? So even like me and you, right? We live in a grind culture. You get up, you go to work, you work all day, you come home, you eat and you sleep. Maybe you like kiss your wife, you kiss your husband, and then that's it. And then you go to work again and you just grind just to make it to Saturday, to hang out for 20 minutes to then like go back to work again. And so growing up, especially with Black and brown people, there's this idea that you have to work. Like, you have to work until you die. You're constantly supporting your family. You're constantly supporting somebody. And so mental health is kind of this thing that exists in the background. It's like, oh, well, you're just, you know, if you're maybe you're having a depression-like tendency. Oh, well, you're just, you know, sad because you just need to take a nap. Or, you know, or if you feel yourself becoming anxious, it's like, oh, well, you know, just take a bath or drink some tea or something. It's like, it's fine if you just kind of work past it. So, so I think working past that stigma, especially when I told my family that I was going to therapy and everything that kind of followed that, was probably the most challenging part. So,
yeah, I feel like I didn't, and not that I'm not to self-diagnose or anything like that, but I knew there was something that I was going through when I was younger that was like, there's a lot of seeking and like, oh, you don't want to, it's like there's a lot of shame in even having admitted that you were struggling with anything, you know. So in even the Filipino culture, in the household that I was raised, the first generation born and raised in America, like not only am I trying, not only are we trying to learn like the American culture and our own family culture, it's like we're also trying to learn these social norms that, I mean, these like, and things that help us, and trying to do that as like, I mean, as a middle school or high school thinking about it, it's like, that's ridiculous. Like, they shouldn't have to deal with that and learn that on their own. I had no siblings. I had like that were here in America who experienced the same thing. So I was out here kind of like, well, let's learn from my peers. What are my peers doing? What are my peers struggling with? You know, and I went to a predominantly Black and Hispanic schools when I was younger. And so I, you know, went to those schools hoping to learn from them, but they also didn't know and none one of us knew what we were doing. Middle school, like, you're not, you know, you're not supposed to learn. You're supposed to learn from your teachers. And so it was just really hard to kind of like see myself in high school, especially like I went through this I was very obese when I was in high school, like overly, and went through these states of a depression where I just wouldn't, you know, I would pretend like I care, but then I pretend I wouldn't care, and then like just eat more, you know. And then I went on this huge weight loss journey where I'm like, okay, I do care, and I care too much, and so I was like not eating enough and working out too much, you know, and just trying to overcompensate, and like but, you know, looking back in hindsight, like I was definitely struggling with some mental health issues that I didn't realize or was even aware of, even thinking about it, you know. And so it was hard. And, you know, with that, what you were saying earlier, like if I were to go to somebody outside of my family, it was even with us, it was kind of like why do you think that we're not here for you?
Oh, yes. You know? Yes. I'm
like, well, no, you are, and I get it, but it's just like, I never went to it, you know, and that's why I never went out. You know, I was afraid. So, or they thought it was a waste of money, because I also came from a family that didn't have much, you know.
Yes. It's so, I think it really is so multifaceted, because there's, it's money, right, to go see a professional person,
Right.
and then it's sharing with someone that's outside of your family, and then there's the shame and the guilt that your own parents feel because they feel like they missed the mark or they weren't there for you in a particular way, and then
Right.
you all of a sudden become the parent in a parent-child relationship where your parents kind of change into like a child zone where you have to affirm them and like love on them by assuring them that they did the best that they could. It's such an interesting thing that happens when you just learn about yourself and become more self-aware and self-knowledgeable of things that are happening. It's really crazy.
Yeah, it really is. And some of my I had some pretty close friends that struggled with it a lot deeper than mine. I mean, like a lot deeper depressions or other mental health issues that were like it seemed like it was unreal. And then I remember I would justify to myself, at least I'm not as bad as this person.
Yes.
And that's another dangerous part, right? And so did you know anybody like growing up that struggled with mental health?
Yes.
Bad?
So growing up, it's funny. I don't know if you had the same experience, but it's like you kind of can't identify it as like a mental health struggle until you're older and you're like, whoa, that was really intense. You're like maybe reflecting on something you went through as a child or like someone you used to hang out with, and you're like, gosh, that was really like severe, that person, and I can't believe I used to hang out or just casually be around that person. So in my family, there's a lot of just like struggles that just exist in my family that I think I saw, but I kind of absorbed passively as a kid, because you just kind of think that things are normal when you're a kid. And so like anxiety or like, a family member kind of being alone in their room for like 4 days or like not talking to the other family members or like or sudden bursts of rage or anger, like unexplainable, or like gaslighting, and then like manipulation, those kind of things. I saw those things all the time as a kid, but you just never recognize it because you just think it's normal because it's how you're growing up.
It's true.
Yeah, I think
it's just normal. Right?
Yeah, and you're just kind of like, whatever, this is just how people are. And then you get older.
Like, I don't know you.
And then you get older and you're like, wait a minute. And it's so interesting how it works because you get older and the more you learn about how you can live a healthier life, it's hard to embrace a healthier lifestyle as well, because it's almost like you have to break out of the shell of comfort that is anxiety or depression or overeating or whatever it is, and when you have to move out of that, like for me, when I tend to move into like depressive or anxious tendencies quite often. So like I get very anxious very quickly, and I start overthinking. So I'll think to myself like, you'll say, hey, Chenele, do you mind turning your computer a little bit? And I'll be like, oh gosh, well, does he think I have a bad computer? Does he think that I shouldn't be on this podcast? What if he thinks, and it's just all of these things. And so it's just, I think growing up, I was around a lot of people that had those same tendencies, especially when I was in high school.
And yeah, but I just kind of thought that that's how people were,
Yeah.
And I just kind of thought like that's how people were and that's how life was, and I just never really paid attention to it. Yeah. So it was pretty crazy now reflecting on it. So.
Yeah, because I mean, I feel like I didn't learn a lot of, like you said, like you take this as like, oh, this is just how things are, and I don't realize like until I look back and like, oh yeah, my cousin was this age when I said, like just for an example, I have a cousin that was 25 in my life, but like, oh, I'm 25 now, and I remember my cousin, and I'm like, wow, he wasn't okay, or something like that, like just for example, or like my professor, like teachers, my gosh, like my teachers.
Oh yes.
Like we, like in my middle school, we like bullied our teachers.
I know. Isn't it hard to think about that? And you're like, I was actually kind of a mean kid.
Right? And like,
yeah, I know.
Like, I remember we bullied our science teacher in middle school to the point where he like snapped.
I know.
And I remember
he's
like probably
too.
my age. And just trying to do his job, trying to provide for his family. Like, dang, man,
I
what
know.
a bunch of jerks.
Yeah, those are hard things to think about because I think about that often, and I'm like, gosh, I really was not a great kid.
Right.
And especially, too, when I graduated from college and I became a teacher, I really felt for my teachers in high school to the point where I emailed a few of them because I was like, hey, I'm so sorry. I don't know if you remember me, but I teach kids now, or I'm a youth minister now, and I am so sorry. And I will pray for you, and I really hope you know that I am sorry.
Wow,
because
that's awesome. That's
so
huge.
Hard. Yeah, like it's so hard out here. So
So if you're in middle school and high school, be nice to your teachers, man.
Yeah, please be nice.
We're just trying to survive and make a living.
We're just trying to survive. Please be nice. No, it's true though. It's true.
Yeah. So when like, was there a point like in your life? I think you might have mentioned it earlier, but was there a point in your life where you knew like I'm so passionate about like making sure that people's mental health, like people are aware of their mental health, like we need to talk about this. Was there a point, like a specific point in time in your life that happened?
I think there were many points, but I think the most recent one was when we first started being quarantined. So like around March 13th, I moved to New York. I went to New York to go watch my niece for a week, but it ended up turning into like 5 months I was there just until now. Yeah, it was crazy. And so when I was there, it was great because I got to hang out with her more and spend intentional time. And she's like 16 right now, so she's in the prime of her life. So just being able to spend time with her, right, and hang out, but then also be able to see, because I am far removed from high school, but being able to see how she's working through things, how she copes with things, how she communicates, being able to talk to her, being able to communicate with other members of my family, especially because we're in quarantine, so all you can do is like talk to people, and communicating with my friends, spending a lot of time by myself because it was just me and a 16-year-old in a house for 4 months. So I think during that time I really was like, I think that there's something to be said about being intentional about taking care of yourself and your mental health, because I've seen a therapist for the past 5 years, but there are daily things that I don't do that I realize that I should do. And there are things that I realize that my family benefits from, and things that my friends benefit from, that I thought, we should be talking about this more, because during quarantine we've all got to work on ourselves a lot more because all you can do is kind of just sit around. And so I thought, it's just really important for all of us to just be doing more these things more intentionally. So I think during quarantine was when I was truly like, all right, I gotta learn about this so then we could really start doing it.
Right. That's awesome. That's so great. It's true because we all are working through something, right? And whether it's like a deeper diagnosis of it, or something just like soft on the surface, like some people are just doing surface level depression and like, and I think quarantine is really gonna kick it out of all us, like you said, and it's just going to rip it and make it, or rather amplify it, like, oh yeah, you really are struggling with this. Did you understand that? Like, it becomes apparent to us, or like it just like gets worse and we struggle with it more. And so, with that, like, it was crazy to me a couple years ago when I realized that, there's some like religion, like people who are in the church and people who are priests that think that mental health issues are silly, or like something. There was like a priest that came out. I was like, please, stop using quotation marks when you say mental health. It's offensive to us who are in your pews. And it takes about like 20, and it was a priest himself who was saying that, who came out to say that. And it was just like, wow, that's crazy to me, because like I've never, like, ever since I became aware of it, I never thought of it otherwise, you know, of being questioned in existence.
Yeah, there have been so many things that I've been like, what? In the past couple months, and I'm like, how could you guys not believe that this thing is real? But yeah, I definitely think in Christian environments, there's a big gap where a lot of conversations about mental health should be happening. So especially there's people that think that mental illnesses or struggles are just spiritual issues. And hey, the devil operates in so many ways. So there could be in real life the devil operating in you when you are in a depressive zone. The devil could be actively operating to speed that up and quickly put you into, you know, deep depression, like suicidal ideations. Those things are realistic and like can happen on a spiritual level. But there are also chemical imbalances that happen within our brain that perpetuate those modes of existing, right, where we can't just like switch it on and off, right? And so I think it's important to see the integration of both like faith and science, right? Those things can work together. And but I do think that there's a huge gap in Christian communities, which is super unfortunate. But funny enough though, it was only until I started working in Denver, my old boss, who is awesome, like middle-aged Polish priest. And he would always, like, whenever I would go to confession, I would come out and we would chat or whatever. And I would ask him how his day was going. He was like, yeah, great. Just hearing confessions. A couple people I had to refer to like some therapy, some counselors, because I'm not a therapist. He was like, there's a line between me being a priest and you needing to see a professional. And that was the first time I'd ever heard a priest say, like, this is not on me. Like, I will pray. We will all pray and unite together. But there's a line where you need to see someone who is certified in mental health counseling. You know what I mean? And that is awesome. And so definitely think that needs to be paid more attention to, for sure.
That's awesome. Yeah. So if you're a Catholic out there who is struggling with mental health and haven't given it a thought, why don't you go out and seek a counselor of some sort and just, I mean, maybe it's for you, maybe it's not, but try it out. I mean, it's something that's important. And if you don't believe in this mental health and put quotation marks when you say it, let's talk. I plan on having more conversations like this in the future. This is something I think we've already talked about on the podcast before, and we'd love to continuously bring it back. And I know Jarrell, our co-host, is also very big on it. So we're gonna try to.
Yeah, Jarrell is awesome.
He's great. So we'll do a Q&A, and maybe we'll bring on a panel of people and kind of talk about it. That'd be cool.
That'd be dope. And also, if you need any resources, if you follow the Human Condition on Instagram,
cool.
It's super awesome. It's all about the integration of our Catholic faith and mental health. So you should check it out. Yeah, we have different states. For every state, that we have suggested faithful counselors. So you should check that out and be a part of the community. We have good conversations, and we would love to support you in any way that we can.
What was it called again?
It's at the Human Condition.
Gotcha. Just started following it.
Yeah, so they're dope.
Cool.
So you should follow them if you want some support.
Yeah, it'll be in the link in the it will be a link to it will be in the description of the show notes and stuff like that. So go check that out. We're gonna be back with some more with Chenele after this break. So we'll be right back.
Sweet.
Okay, we're back with Chenele Shaw. Again, make sure you follow her at Chenele_K. That's CHENELE_K. Right? Is that right? It's right.
Yep.
Okay.
You spelled my name right. So great. You didn't call me like Chenele. Ooh, thank God.
Oh man.
You wouldn't believe how many people call me Chenele, and I'm
Chenele.
like, yeah.
That's amazing. Wow. Well, I get Adriani all the time.
Oh yeah. Honestly, I would see that.
Right?
The first time I think I saw your name at Ave Maria, I was like, oh, Adriani. And my friend was like,
it's spelled
no.
like It's spelled, first of all, it's spelled the feminine way. So,
yeah.
Like masculine way is Adrian, and I just don't correct people anymore. You're just like, whatever.
You just like, I know. Adrian. With me too. I'm like, sure, Chenele. Okay. Yeah.
That's good. Right. So, we talked about in the first half of the podcast, we talked about mental health because that's something you're passionate about. And we always talk, and here we bring on guests and talk about their passions and the things that they're ardent, like ardently is passionate and stuff like that. And so, like, another thing that you like to post on your social media, and that's what kind of reconnected me to your social media, because it was being shared a lot of your posts and things that you were posting. Was your talk about Black lives and us Catholics and our role in that, right? The Black Lives Matter, in fact, indeed matter, right? And often this conversation gets, immediately when you say those 3 words, people polarize immediately.
Oh, yeah. Oh, gosh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about a little bit about that. Like, why is it important for us Catholics to not be afraid of saying Black Lives Matter?
I have so many thoughts on this. So please, be like, all right, girl. If I start getting, so I think that first it's just I don't want to say crazy because I don't like to say that word too much, but I do think it's silly and it's interesting that people can't, for the life of them, say, okay, this is important, and this thing that has taken over this name, right? So like Black Lives Matter, the statement, and Black Lives Matter, the organization, 2 separate things, right? The statement existed before the organization. Mm-hmm. If you don't feel comfortable, because I know the big hang up is the organization, especially in Catholic circles. Right. If you don't feel comfortable saying Black Lives Matter because of the organization and because you're going to be affiliated with the organization, right? Sure, whatever, Okay. I do think that the lame part is that it's stopping a lot of people from doing the work. It's stopping a lot of people from saying anything. And I'm like, dude, come on. Like, just because there's... And so that's why I've started saying, too, because one of my good friends was talking to me, and he was telling me about how one of his friends was saying that Black lives are sacred. He was saying Black Lives Matter is cool. But matter is like bare minimum. It's bare minimum for me to matter to somebody. Right. But for me to be seen as sacred to someone, which God created each one of us individual and sacred, is really raising the bar, right? So if you wanted to, I figured if people even want to change the narrative, okay, Black lives are sacred then. That's not Black Lives Matter. We can all feel comfortable with that. We all believe that God created each one of us sacred anyway, so Catholics can roll with that. Right. I think for Catholics that don't believe, Catholics and Christians that don't believe that racism is even a thing, I'm truly astonished at this point. I don't know. There's so many resources. We have learned in so many history classes. There's so many things that tell us the history of Black people in America. Not the full history, usually just like the subservient, sad history. But so we know how we got here in America, and we know how the past 100, even before that, years have been for us realistically. And I think the wild thing is to think that something this horrible as slavery can exist for hundreds of years, whereas like in 1965 in the Congo, Black people were still in cages as jokes for white people that would go visit, and people are still alive from 1965. Like that's not forever ago. That's like my dad. So it's just like my dad. Yeah, my dad was born in 1950. So I think it's like to think that something can just be like, all right, well, it's extinguished. It's extinguished because Chris Brown is on the radio, Oprah has a magazine, and Obama was president. No, it's still happening. There are still systems in place that create less opportunities for Black and brown people.
And that's a thing too. Like you can show progress and still not have done everything, right?
Exactly.
Like we're not denying the fact that it was great that we had a Black president, or the great that we have these Black artists and these Black celebrities and these Black actors and these Black athletes that are really popular and like sought after. But it's like there's still an issue that exists, right?
Exactly. And I think to say that, I mean, I've really had a lot of time to think about it, and I am not white, so I can't get into the heart of why it's so hard for a lot of racist, because not all white people are racist, but a lot of racist white people to kind of come to terms. I was thinking that maybe it's because to acknowledge that racism exists and to acknowledge that you might benefit, even passively, right? So you want to, talk about privilege and how that is a trigger word for people. So to even say that you benefit passively, it would change your entire way of being. Right? It would change how you interact with people. It would change how you shop, how you talk, what music you listen to, everything about your life. And I think it's hard for people to accept that change. And I think right now, especially with everything popping off in the past couple months, a lot of Black people, like for me, it's hard to wake up and say, okay, cool. This Black man was killed over a counterfeit $20 bill. Okay. All right. Well, this other man was chased down in a neighborhood and shot to death. And then nothing happened for 2 months until we did, the law's job and signed petitions. Okay, well, this other woman was sleeping and was killed in her sleep, and still nothing is happening. It's hard to wake up every day and constantly be re-traumatized by events and news every day. And to hear, especially from your Christian brothers and sisters, that those events and those things are just kind of passive things, right? Like you guys just all need to be okay because Obama was president and you guys and everything's fine. And it's just one of those things where it's like it's hard to exist in that place, especially when you walk into a church and you feel like there's so many things happening in the world, but this is something that's really important that's happening right now, and that's okay. And that doesn't take away from the fact that homelessness is also happening, or teenage pregnancy is also happening. That's okay. Those things can happen at the same time, but it's all right to say that this is happening and this is what we're going to talk about right now. So I think as Christians and Catholics, there is this interesting thing that's happening where there seemingly cannot be conversations about Black lives, brown lives, without it turning into a but and. It's like, oh, but, have you guys talked about how abortion is the number one killer of Black people? Okay, thank you so much. But that's not what the conversation is right now. And that's okay. And there's this weird defense that's happening where people are trying, or I used to think well-intentioned, but now at this point I'm like, come on, girl. It's people are trying to say, hey, I know more than you about this thing that is affecting you personally. And I'm going to just tell you that with no thought. And there's this interesting thing happening where there's like there can't be two thoughts at once, and there can't just be one thought because it's a threat to every other thing. And it's just so interesting, and it's harmful, and it's problematic, and I think it makes it so hard because when we're talking about Black lives in the womb, there is no question, there's no conversation. I will go and I will pray with my brothers and sisters, and I will pray for an end to abortion. We will support young Black and brown mothers. We will show up and show out. But for some reason, those adult babies are all of a sudden problematic political conversation triggers. And that is where it's hard to feel like, gosh, it's hard to be a part of those communities, because you feel really like, gosh, what is going on? You can't just fight for babies and me fight for adults. Like, Catholics are called to have a culture of life, an entire culture of life. And so that means, like, Jesus didn't say it was going to be easy and that, like, okay, well, I'm going to do one, you do another one. He said, we're just going to have an entire culture. And so that calls each one of us to stand up for life from conception to natural death. And so, so I just think we as, and this is just, my opinion, but I think as Christians in 2020 and before, we have aligned ourselves politically, and we have gotten to this point where we have found God in politics and in our political figures, to the point where being anti-racist is being unpatriotic.
Right.
And those two things to me are so interesting, because you'll have, I don't know if you have the same experience, but I'll have conversations with people and I'll say, hey, it's as easy as not being racist. It's as easy as acknowledging that these things happen and continue to happen to Black and brown people all over America. But for some reason, that's a threat to patriotism. It's a threat to America. It's a threat to our way of living. And when those things are happening, I'm like, you guys, you should see how crazy this sounds. Like, doesn't this sound so insane to say that by me speaking out against these things that I'm not a patriot anymore? Like, what? And so, so it's almost, it's so crazy.
It's an what I call it, a toxic patriotism.
Exactly.
It's just like, why can't we both and, why not a both and rather than an either or, why can't we have the conversation about both things? Why can't we have, like, respect for our country and hope for the best while loving and trying to do what's best for our Black brothers and sisters?
It's really as if it's like, and it's interesting because patriotism to me has become one of those, like, weird things now where I'm not even sure. Like, I'll meet somebody and they're like, I love America, and I'm like, all right, I don't, it's one of those things where I'm like, I love America too, but, like, how much do you love America? Because there's people that are patriotic, but then there's people that are, like, nationalist, right? It's like there's a difference between being a patriot, where I can say, hey, I'm a patriot, I live in America, I love America, America's dope, but America has done this and this wrong, and this and this I don't agree with, and we should really change this and this about America. Then there's nationalists that are like, I love America, America's it, America's the best, America number one, America can do nothing wrong, and if you say anything against, that's it. And unfortunately, I think that that's infiltrated the church in a way where being like being a Christian is being this, like, patriot extreme, and you can't, and it's like this interesting thing that exists where it's like, wait a minute, what? And you can't have any critiques, and after mass at the closing hymn you're singing and I'm proud to be an American, and you're like, what? You're like, wait a minute, it's like, wait a minute, like, what do these two things have to do with each other? They have nothing to do with each other, because the church is above politics.
It's as if Catholics only reside in America.
And what? I'm like, wait a minute, because we'll talk about the universality of the church if I'm praying to Our Lady of Lourdes. If we're talking about, like, Jesus being a Middle Eastern man, which is even that a trigger for some people. It's crazy. It's like the universality of the church is real and tangible until it's not, until you don't want it to be, because it threatens your way of living. And so, I think I have I am disappointed in a lot of the ways that I've seen these conversations kind of not happen, whether it's like with our priests or just like in our parishes. because I think it's just kind of sad, and it's just like, why are we so scared? Because it's a reality, and if we're protecting people and we're practicing even Catholic social teaching where we're upholding the life and dignity of people, then that shouldn't be something that's hard for us. But for some reason it is, you know, and I truly think it's because we have found God in our political figures and in our political parties, where God is not like, God is not a Republican. God is not a Democrat. And I don't know if this sounds crazy to people, but it's like, it's, you know,
wait a minute,
you know, and it's like, God is, you know, and we have aligned ourselves so heavily that we are afraid now to address issues that don't fall even in either category, you know. I've been talking to a lot of Catholics that feel politically homeless. It's like, where am I even? Because I don't even know. With this party, they're shutting down Planned Parenthoods, which is great. Yeah. But then in this party, they're like, you know, advocating for something that is way against church teaching. So it's like, well, then which party is worse? You know, it's just really, it's super interesting, you know.
We can get into the whole like debate, like the two-party system is just not working anymore.
I know. So I'm like, but you know what? I will stop before I start talking about like third parties, because I don't know if I want to, you know, I don't want to drag your podcast into that realm. But yeah, dude, I definitely think, you know, it is so interesting that we have such a hard time. But I do think it's because we've aligned ourselves. And I think a lot of Catholics and Christians are recognizing it. I see a lot of conversations happening just about like, hey, why is it so hard for me as a white person to just say, like, Black Lives Matter? Why is that hard? It's because the parish I go to might have, like, some racist people in it. Or, you know, or it's because my family members might be, or it's because I might have some thoughts or some ways of living that I have perpetuated in my life that have been racist. There's a lot of conversations that are happening that are really good. But I also think that there's more on a nationwide front that I think need to happen.
Right. It's just, there's so much that we can do. But like where I feel like it's either people are overwhelmed by the debates, but also maybe even overwhelmed by the thought of where to start. Like at this point, you really should know where to start. I mean, there's a lot of resources showing you where you can start. But, you know, I guess it's like, if you really try to if you're really still stuck at that starting point, which is okay. Just know that it's okay to care about Black people. It's okay to say Black Lives Matter. And guess what? It's okay to advocate for it too, and still not affiliate yourself with Black Lives Matter, the organization.
Say it. Maybe people will hear you and be like, you know what? If that guy said, because I don't know how many people will have to say, hey, it's okay. It's all right for me to be like, Hawaiian lives matter. Right. Pacific Islanders' lives matter. Right. You know, even white people's lives matter. Right. You know, it's like you see these conversations that are happening amongst, like, especially when all the horrific things regarding police brutality were really popping off, you know, months ago. There are even white people that I would see specifically jump into my DMs and say like, okay, well, did you see that this white man was killed with a knee on his neck months ago by this police officer and they haven't been charged yet? And I said, exactly. So you guys, we should be outraged together. We should be upset together because it's happening. If it can happen to you, imagine, like, we should be upset together, you know? And I think it's so interesting because it's like we can think more than one thing. I can think, hey, we should have more police accountability, and we should really say, okay, if these things are happening, if you have a track record, like, something should happen to you. You should be suspended, you should be fired, etc., whatever. But then at the same point, I can say, if someone walked, and I tell my friends this and my family all the time, if someone ran up to me right now and said, Chenele, there's a in the neighbor's house, there's a man holding your neighbor hostage and he has a gun and we want you to go in there and save your neighbor, and you might not come out, and you also don't know your neighbor, and so you might just die. And I would say, you know what? Maybe it's just my neighbor's time, because I don't know if I would go in there. But there's a lot of men and women. I know that's so horrible, but it's true. It's like,
true.
And you know, if there was a fire and someone was like, Chenele, there's a 5 alarm. I think it's a fire, but it's like all the firemen have to come. And,
right.
you know, there's a huge fire and we're going to have you run up 20 flights of stairs and you might die and the building might fall on you. And that's it.
Good luck.
So go in there and save these people. Absolutely not. I would say, you know, I think it's their time. I'm not doing it. But I know there are brave men and women who will do it. So I think it's important to say, like, that you can say you desire accountability and consequence, but also I would not do their job. It's okay to have respect for the position, but then also say, like, but, you know, and people that say, well, it's just one rotten apple or a few rotten apples. Okay, if I go to the grocery store and there's a bag of apples and a couple of them are rotten, guess who's not buying that bag? Chenele. You don't buy that bag. You know, you tell the grocery store people that there's rotten apples and then they throw it out because that's it. There needs to be consequence, you know, and I think it's okay to think in a way that is not just like one-lined, which is unfortunately just happening a lot in the church, which sucks.
I mean, it's in the church. It's everywhere, but it has infiltrated our church. And I like how you said that earlier. It's just I don't want to, you know, like, unfortunately, there's probably going to be people here who stop listening to this the minute I mentioned that we were going to talk about Black Lives Matter, right, or the racism issue. And I hope they didn't. I hope they stayed, and I hope that they're listening still, because this is something that needs to be heard. My brothers and sisters in the Catholic Church, like, we need to be defending our brothers and sisters who are Black and who, whether or not they're in the Catholic Church, you know, like, are we not our brother's keeper, right? Are we not our brother's keeper? And no matter what that is or however it goes by, it's like, obviously you're going to keep your Catholic morals to, like, close to our chest. We're going to still do that. But you can still do that and defend life.
There it is.
Right? There's a way. There's a way.
Defend life, dude, and that means, like, all life. And that's a hard conversation to have with yourself, right? That's hard introspection, but all life, right? Like, Black lives, white lives, Asian lives, all lives, but in this moment, Black lives and brown lives, right? That's okay. And that's okay, you know, and I think coming to terms with the fact that that's okay, rewriting that narrative that exists within your brain, maybe in your family and your friends, whatever conversations you're having, that it's okay to be focused on one thing and you're not being a traitor to everything else around you. That's okay.
Right. Is there if you were to, you know, someone's gonna ask you, it's like, why is it important for me to, like, I'm just, you know, say I'm just like a random person who doesn't have much of an influence, why is it important for me to advocate for Black lives, especially if I feel like it contradicts my Catholic faith or beliefs? What would you say to this person? Well,
first I would say, is it an issue with the organization? Because if that's the conversation, then it's okay, because the statement that Black Lives Matter existed before the organization. So I would kind of take that to heart. And then I would also say it matters because me as a Black woman, I know who my audience is. I know what my family looks like. I know who my friends are. And I know when people see me, I am a Black woman. That's what they first see. That's first impression. And I know that the conversations around me might be pivoted because of what I look like. And I acknowledge that. And I think if I'm speaking to a white person, I think it's important to acknowledge that you have a responsibility because of what you look like. This is your moment. This is it. Right. Like, when people see you, they say, oh, wow, you know, they might not actively, of course, because that's strange, but like passively, oh, that's a white person, boom. There might be a level of comfort. There might be some kind of familial energy that exists between you and another white person, where conversations will happen more quickly, right? Things that are offensive or racist or prejudiced might just happen around you. Right. And those conversations and those topics will be perpetuated if you keep just passively taking it in and not saying anything. If I jump in and tell a white person that blah, blah, blah is wrong, okay, sure. I'm just a black woman that's telling a white person that something's wrong and I'm angry and I'm upset or whatever. Right. When a white person corrects another white person or stands up for something, that is your family. That's your brethren. That is someone saying, hey, this is wrong. I'm another white person saying to another white person that something's wrong. And it's not just like, oh, well, I don't have to say anything because there's a bunch of black people saying things now, or there's a bunch of other, you know, whatever. It's important for you because you know what your community looks like. You know what your friends are like. You know what your family looks like and what they talk about. And your family isn't my audience. Your friends aren't my audience. Right. You are the audience. You speak to your people around you. And for things to change and stop, you know, perpetuating, for bad things to stop happening in terms of like racist conversations and ideas, it's really important that you take that responsibility and say, I might not be able to go on Instagram and have 10,000 people repost my idea about something or repost my thought on Black lives being important. But if I can sit with my mom and dad at the dinner table, and when dad says something racist and I say, hey, dad, actually, that's wrong because of blank, blank, blank. Now my dad won't also say something racist to his coworker. And then, you know, my dad also won't say something racist to that woman at the grocery store. And I'm slowly stopping that spread of racist idea and behavior because my dad is the one that's saying things. My mom, my friends, you know. So I think it's important. It's like each of us have a role. And I think it's silly to think that you have to do something huge to be relevant, because racism is obviously, it's existed for this long because people just kind of, we talk about biases, right? And it's because people just kind of have existed with it. And you have people now in 2020, people that are 50 years old, people that are 20 years old say, oh, wow, I had no idea. Like, I've just lived my whole life just kind of thinking that, like, oh, I thought that was okay. Like, oh, I thought if there's a black man walking through my neighborhood, I just kind of thought it was okay to lock my doors. I just kind of thought it was okay to feel, to warn my children, you know, and it's like these ideas that have existed for years because people are like, oh, I just thought it was okay. But then until one day where they're like, oh yeah, my friend Nicole told me that actually that might be a bias and I had no idea what biases are. Well, look at that. Claps and snaps to Nicole for saying something. You know what I mean? So I think every person has a role, no matter how small, to stop this.
Yeah, I think it's so true because when we, like, you know, growing up, like you said, like for myself, I grew up in a very predominantly black and Hispanic neighborhood. And not like my parents, I'm a Filipino American. I was first generation, like I said earlier. And I remember my parents telling me, if there's a black person coming, lock your door. Lock the door. Make sure you lock the door. I'm gonna go in the store real quick. You know, whatever. But why not? You know, like, I mean, yeah. I mean, maybe they said the same thing about any strange people, but like, it was particularly sometimes like, oh, if there was a black person that comes, lock your door. And it maybe just takes as much as that. And like, you know, like not saying, oh, unlock your doors when they come. Not saying that. But, but like, you know, slowly saying little things like that. Like, oh, look at this. Isn't this black person so like beautiful? Like instilling that in your kids as you're younger and like having them, exposing them to like, you know, I know they are making, like there's this company making beautiful black dolls. That having those around and not just the Barbie blonde hair, blue eyes around all the time for your daughters, like having them interested in, like, I love comics because like they're they're introducing all the famous comic heroes in like by like being taken over, like Miles Morales, Black and Hispanic, and you got like like there's the Black Captain America now, who is the one who's like going to be taking over. Like, so like they're just like showing all these different ways of which breaking these social norms of like, oh, the white male is the hero.
Yeah, you know? And for some reason, like, white is the exemplar of excellence, which is so interesting because you see that, and I tell some of my friends, I'm like, if you don't believe that, then reflect on, because I heard something really interesting in a talk the other day. Reflect on when you received First Communion. And remember when you received those cards and what those cards look like. And remember the little girl praying on the front. What did she look like? Was she a white woman with blonde hair? Because I bet you she was.
Right.
And did you ever see a black person on any First Communion cards?
Right.
Did you ever see, you know, it's like reflect on those moments in your life that you're like, oh my gosh, I have never seen a black or brown person in this space.
Right.
And you just exist with it. But you know what's interesting, because as a black and brown person growing up, I was always like, I wonder why these people don't look like me, but whatever. You know, in the little kid Bibles, I was like, whatever. Yeah. I didn't know that Mary had blonde hair and blue eyes, but whatever. Right. You know, and you just kind of accept it because whatever. And so it is interesting, and I think it's a part of all of us to erase narratives that have existed for our entire lives. And like you were saying, that doesn't mean if you're sitting in a car and your parents say, hey, make sure you lock the door. If anyone comes up to the door, lock the door, right? And it's important for us to say, you know, if anyone comes up to the door, lock the door, period, because strangers are strangers. Right. And not to perpetuate the idea that a black man jogging down the street in your neighborhood where there's tons of white people, that he's a danger to your family, where a white man walking might not be. And so so there's this interesting, there are these biases that exist within all of us that I think need to be confronted, or then you know this thing is just gonna like keep on happening. But I think it's reoccurring. It's hard for people to confront those biases, because then they're like, wait a minute, I don't think like that, like I'm not actively racist, and that's okay. You might not be, but being passively racist is also harmful. And having those ideas and having those ways of functioning, even in your church, I can't tell you how many times I've been asked if I'm a recent convert, or where from Africa I'm from, or you know, and I'm like, dude, like what, or how articulate I sound, and I'm like, come on, you guys, like, or I don't sound like every other black person, like you guys be better, you know, like be better than that. And so so things like that, definitely important to have some self-reflection for sure.
Right. And you know, and if you're doing the work, another thing I want to say out there before we started doing our little wrap up here is like, if you're doing the work and someone comes up to you and says, oh, like a comment on your post, you know, you like I mentioned it before, but challenge them, you know, like don't just be like, okay, like don't just like backfire like with the response, you know, like don't you know, get all fiery right away. It's good to have that passion for it, right? But be smart with it. It's like, hey man, well, it sounds like you're kind of jumping to conclusions here. This is not what I'm saying by this post, you know, like, or something like that, you know, whatever the case may be. Because I had to have a couple conversations like that where like I posted something advocating for Black lives, right? And it's like, oh, it sounds like you just want da-da-da-da-da. I'm like, whoa. Let's not jump the gun.
You're just like, calling for division. Right. Why would you even say?
Something like that. I was like,
ugh.
okay, look, that's not what I'm saying. Here's what I'm trying to say. Here's what this post, I believe the goal of the post was. You know, I think we're might be having a misunderstanding. And so, like, we discuss, we have it, and then we understand. You know, like, did it work every time? No, it happened maybe of the 4 or 5 times it happened, maybe it happened 3 times it worked, where we came to conclusion of understanding. The other 2, guess what? They just did not care about my response.
And whatever.
And then you can't do anything. Can't do anything about it, right? And so, speaking of Instagram, like, where social media, all these conversations are happening. A few weeks ago, the Living Person, our co-host Jarrell, made this shareable post of a post that you had on your Instagram, and this is what I think got a lot of people from the the skepticism side of like whether I should advocate for Black lives or not as a Catholic, to like, okay, I understand now. It helps. I can help and not affiliate myself with Black Lives Matter. And this post that he shared was from your one of your posts. So I'm gonna share this real quick. You said down in your post, a person can say in all conviction that Black Lives Matter without agreeing 100% with the organization that the name embodies. And you go on to say, if you're uncomfortable with supporting Black Lives Matter, the organization, okay, the statement still rings true. Don't forget that. Keep that same energy. Black lives are sacred and they matter. Also, regarding Black lives, sacred does not make regarding Black lives as sacred doesn't make me a liberal. Honoring Black lives and critiquing our unjust treatment doesn't make me a liberal. Creating art in churches that elevates Black women, Black and brown people in this moment isn't liberal. Attempting to include Black and brown saints in our rotation, in our sanctuaries, religious ed classes, youth groups, etc., doesn't make me a liberal. Liberal and conservative should not be applied in the realm of theology. Like that line too, especially, is huge for me. Was huge. Theologically, we can be orthodox, heterodox, or heretical. So it is anything but orthodox to regard the human life as sacred and representative as such. No. Is it? No, it's not. This is a liberal media manipulation, y'all. It's orthodox as it gets, right? Our lives are sacred from womb to tomb. Start coming at this from the perspective, and it's not hard. It's not liberal. It's not something we haven't been doing as a church. We are sacred. Fight for that and keep that same energy. And I think that was just so huge. Like, you know, I shared this and I just like was I guess I had not seen. This is kind of how I got acquainted. Like, oh my gosh, that's Chenele Shaw. Like,
oh my gosh, we went to school together.
That's so cool. And so like then I started sharing that, and I was like, wow. And then seeing what you've been posting and all the stuff that you have been doing, I think it's great, and I'm so thankful for it. So if you are on social media and on Instagram, make sure you go follow Chenele Shaw, okay, or Chenele_K. What is, I mean, for those who are following you, so what is your goal when you're on Instagram, when you're posting and stuff like that? I mean, like, there's days where you're posting TikToks and it's like super funny, and there's days where you're posting songs, there's days you're posting posts about Black lives. So what is your overall goal on there?
I mean, you know, it's interesting because and excuse me if all of a sudden I just got real dark. The sun went behind the building, so I'm like very dark all of a sudden in this YouTube video. But anyway, I think my goal, and it's interesting because I didn't intend to be any kind of like speaker or like any kind of someone that someone would like look to for any kind of knowledge for anything. Right. I just was kind of free sharing my thoughts. And I think my goal just moving forward is just I would like to be as transparent as possible about where I think we can improve as a church. Because I love the church and I love being a part of it. And so I think that there's not enough compassionate critique happening of where the church can improve. So a lot of my posts, if they are in regards to how the church is approaching Black lives, or how we as people can approach Black lives, or how my white brothers and sisters can do better, it's all from a place of, I'd like to come from a place of compassion, but like correction, because I think that a lot of people either come from one or the other. So it's either so compassionate that it's lenient, and you're not really saying anything, or it's so correctional that it's rude. And people, you know, and people are like, yikes, you know, and people don't want to hear what you're saying because it's like a lot. And so, so I think my goal is just to come with people with like compassionate correction, and whatever that looks like. I think right now the conversation just needs to be like, a lot of people don't think that Black Catholics exist. So I'm out in these streets just like doing it. I love to do that work. So, and I think a lot of people are kind of feeling like Black people are in this constant state of rage, which, you know, is kind of true. But at the same point, I think we're like welcome for conversation. Right. So I always like my direct messages to be like a place of conversation. If you have a question, if you have a thought, if you disagree, I don't mind like responding or engaging, because I think that dialogue is super important, and whatever I can bring, you know, whatever is best for my mental health and whatever conversation I can have, I like to do that. So that's pretty much my goal.
Yeah, have that. I think the most important part is just be willing to have the conversation and be willing to be wrong, be willing to be corrected, and you could be right. I mean, like, there's obviously an opportunity for you to be correct. Like, you can make correct statements, but don't try to always be it. You know, be flexible.
Exactly.
So, be easy to have a conversation with. Be that kind of person. You know.
Yes, exactly.
And lastly, what is your for those Catholics who are struggling with advocating for Black lives and disassociating the organization from that phrase, what is your message out to those? Or just anybody who's also dealing with mental health, like
just kind of struggling. Okay. Well, for your mental health, remember, there's only one you. You are the first advocate for yourself. So, and God created you to live a life of fullness and goodness, right? To glorify God. And there are impediments sometimes that stop us from glorifying God to our fullest potential. And if that is something that you are struggling with, then it's okay to seek whatever help that you need to get you to that place of being able to glorify God fully. So, you know, do that. Take care of yourself, because you matter. And I think, you know, if you need to look at yourself in the mirror every morning and be like, I'm important, then that's what you need to do, because it's really hard out here.
Right. Leave a thing that my friend did before. Leave sticky notes around like random places you would see it.
Yes.
Like, you're important. Like, you matter. Like, that's something that my friend did and was super helpful for them.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yes, I agree. And then in terms of Black lives, I think the best way that I can put it is one of my friends on social media. Her name's Gloria Purvis. So Purvis. You should definitely check her out. She is awesome. She had this quote that I kind of built on when I saw it. But basically she said, so racism is a sin, right? God created each one of us with dignity and respect. So racism asserts that only some of us deserve dignity and respect. So racism is calling God a liar. So if that is not something that if you're into calling God a liar, then Godspeed. But I think if you can look at racism for what it is, it's a sin that calls God a liar, then there should be no organization, there should be no phrase, there should be no slogan that impedes you from fighting that sin and beating it back to hell. Because it's a sin, and it's, you know, an offense to our Lord, and that should be enough. And regardless of whatever slogan, whatever political party that phrase might be associated with for you, I think reminding yourself that it's a sin and that it is calling God a liar should be enough. So that's what I would say. And just kind of like keep up that same energy as if you would any other sin, and we're talking about anything else.
Right. Whew. Golly, that was good. That was great.
So she's dope. So
that's awesome. And then shout out a few of the Instagram accounts that you think people should follow. That's probably one of them. Can you say her name again?
Yes. So, okay, let me move my camera. This is a little brighter. Here we go. So, so Gloria Purvis is one that I would follow. She's awesome. Icondola would definitely follow. He also is sharing some goodness. The Human Condition is what I would follow if you want some mental health resources. And who else am I following right now that's really giving me life? Also, Vanessa Goldberg is another person that I would follow. Really great. So a couple people that are just sharing some real goodness on these streets. So
awesome. So I mean, if you're on social media, I always tell people, like, if you're going to be on social media, at least cater who you're watching, who you're paying attention to,
exactly.
because that's what's going to bring you life, because that's you're on all the time.
Exactly.
If you have a slight addiction like I do, like you're gonna be on it, and at least if you're gonna be on it, bring it, like, have things that are actually gonna be beneficial and then motivate you and help you do good things, you know.
Agreed.
So great. That's it. I think that's all. If you
All
want to
right.
continue the conversation, go follow Chenele at Chenele CHENELE_K.
There it is.
There it is. And then you can follow me at It's Only Adrian, and follow the podcast at Living Ardently. If you want to, again, just hit up on us in a DM. Again, we're both open for a discussion. Chenele definitely will respond to you. It might take me a few days to get back to you on DM, but you know, I will. Yeah, but let's have this conversation, guys. Let's not stop.
Yep.
If you want to make sure you're following us on a podcast and YouTube, you're subscribed to wherever you're listening this on, because we'll have more episodes in the future with awesome guests like Chenele, where we're talking about different things that they're passionate about, and it's really great. So if you're new to the podcast, thank you, welcome. Go listen to our old past events. We have done an episode with Ike and Dolo, who also shouted you out, which is pretty cool.
Whoop! I'm a celebrity. Oh my god!
So go check those out. It's been a really great time. If you're new, welcome in. And if you don't know, we have a YouTube account. So go watch the video portion of this that will be posted a few days after this audio version comes out on Monday. But yeah, thanks guys. Thanks for listening. I really appreciate your love and support. Do all the good stuff. Make sure you follow Chenele, follow us. And until next week, keep living ardently.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Peace, guys.
Bye.
That's great.
Sorry I turned into this